Recently, I've acquired a new nickname, Miss Constitution. It's not the most conventional nickname, but it has gained popularity among my friends and even a few of my teachers. So you may be wondering, how does somebody acquire a nickname such as Miss Constitution? Well, I can't quite pinpoint the origin, but I do have some theories. Perhaps it was given to me because I once seriously tried to memorize the entire document. It could have been the time I ranted about the Constitution on C-SPAN, or maybe it was because I quoted it on every single AP US history test last year, multiple times. Personally, I like to attribute it to the time I saw the original Constitution at the National Archives, and quite literally cried. Needless to say, I'm quite a fan of our governing document. The ratification of the Constitution in 1788 signaled unity and a willingness to compromise throughout the 13 colonies after years of relentless debate. This, however, was not the first step toward unity. In 1782, 6 years prior to the ratification of the Constitution, our nation's motto, E Pluribus Unum, Latin for out of many one, was adopted. In one of the most contentious times in our nation's history, when the very fabric of our new democracy was vehemently debated and disagreed upon, the concept of E Pluribus Unum overshadowed political animosity and endured as the uncontentious base upon which our new nation needed to be built. In order to prosper, America would need to be comprised of people with unique and diverse perspectives, backgrounds, and viewpoints. However, in recent years, we've begun to stray from that original message. Through a dangerous combination of hyper-partisanship, culture of confirmation bias, and disdain for discussion, we've begun to lose sight of an imperative pillar of American democracy. As a people, as a nation, as citizens, and as politicians, we must be willing to discuss opposing viewpoints. We must teach, understand, and embrace the concept of E Pluribus Unum and work to create a climate of pluralism in both our legislative bodies and in our daily lives as private citizens. The desire for a pluralistic society was revered by the likes of George Washington and James Madison. Central to the founding of our government was the idea that we will either rise united or fall divided. But if you felt like in recent years our political climate has become more divided, you're not imagining it. A 2017 study found that the rate of party line voting in Congress has steadily risen from around 60% in the 1970s to nearly 90% today. Objectively, our politics have become more partisan. But why does this matter? Though it's still early to understand the long-term consequences, another startling congressional trend has followed the same timeline. During the 93rd Congress, which was in session from 1973 to 1974, over 26,000 pieces of legislation were enacted or introduced to Congress. However, during the 114th Congress, spanning from 2015 to 2017, that number fell to just above 12,000 pieces of legislation. Simply put, we're placing partisanship above progress. Unfortunately, the effects of party line voting are not left on the Congress floor. On a civilian level, we have seen a stark increase in hyper-partisanship and a culture where obsequiously siding with one political party has become the norm. This can be largely attributed to citizens surrounding themselves only with people, ideas, and news sources that do nothing beyond reaffirm what they already believe. We are too quick to seek out information and perspectives that are exactly like our own and disregard anything that might challenge our thinking, effectively resulting in a state of partisan gridlock. In order to move forward, we must learn to better communicate with one another. As cliche as it may sound, a simple remedy to gridlocked partisanship is engagement in conversation with those with whom we disagree. In the end, we all do want the same things: safer schools, better healthcare, a stronger economy. But due to variance in things like environment, culture, and upbringing, different people are led down different paths. However, these paths should lead toward converging solutions. Too often, we mistakenly believe these dichotomies arise from malice, when in actuality, they're indicative of the strength of our democracy. We've begun to take bipartisanship and civil discourse, these really great and important things, and equate them with dignifying what we believe to be irreconcilably evil. It's become all too easy to fall into a vicious feedback loop of lack of understanding, lack of discussion, lack of progress, and ultimately rendering those on the other side of the aisle as somehow having less humanity than us. I discovered firsthand the importance of effective discourse last March when I served as a delegate to the United States Senate Youth Program, a program that brings together 2 high school students from every state to DC for a week to speak with some of the most influential people in our federal government. Early in the week, 5 other delegates and I sat together at lunch and initiated a candid discussion on a hotly debated issue. We all came from very different states and very different backgrounds, but took the time to actually listen and consider each person's perspectives. So we talked for about 30 minutes, and halfway through our discussion, a delegate from Idaho stopped us and asked, "So what are your guys' political beliefs?" Because it seems like, for the most part, we all want the same things and kind of agree. It turned out 3 were Democrats and 3 were Republicans. So what can we take from this? If 6 high schoolers with vastly different political views are able to listen, learn from one another's experiences, and understand that none of us have a monopoly on wisdom, why isn't Congress doing the same? We need to quit treating political opponents as enemies and rather recognize that we are all co-authoring the story of America. In order to understand the extent to which opposing viewpoints and constructive debate are necessary for democracy, let's take a stroll back to the year 1788. Our new nation was split between 2 prominent political factions, the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. The Federalists wanted to ratify the Constitution without a Bill of Rights, as they believed listing rights was a way of limiting rights. On the other hand, the Anti-Federalists opposed the ratification of the Constitution, as they believed without a Bill of Rights, it would be far too easy for our federal government to shift back into a monarchy. Though the history books tend to paint the Federalists in a more favorable light, without the Anti-Federalist opposition and a willingness of both sides to compromise, we would not have the Constitution and Bill of Rights duo that we so highly value today. Now, imagine if the 2 sides had treated each other as enemies and refused to debate and compromise. Imagine if they hadn't taken the time to actually listen to and understand each other's ideas and perspectives. Where would our country be today? Now, I'm not here to tell you the solution is easy, as this issue is far more complex than any 10-minute speech. But there are all things we can do to improve the level of political discourse in this country. To start, we must redefine winning. We go into political debates with the intent to win, to ensure our own ideals and interests come out on top. Though this mindset is great in soccer and chess tournaments, it translates horribly to politics and public service. When it comes to governing, winning should not be about convincing everyone to agree with you through any and all means necessary. Winning should be about working with public servants on all sides of the aisle to craft the most robust legislation to help the most people. Now, before I go any further, I want to make it abundantly clear that I'm not asking anybody to abandon their own political beliefs for the sake of getting along with everyone. I have my own political views, and they're very important to me. But I'm challenging all of you to take the time to talk to somebody that you think you strongly disagree with. And you'll probably be surprised by how much you actually agree. But before we get to that point, we have to stop treating those on the other side of the aisle as enemies. Nobody has ever altered their political beliefs or even considered the other side after being attacked, insulted, or humiliated. We need to remember that we are all co-creating a better country rather than trying to tear each other apart. More division won't heal our wounds. And I'll admit, keeping ourselves closed off from the other party's views and values is much easier than opening ourselves up. But I'm willing to do it, and I hope you are too, because upholding democracy is not easy. It was never meant to be easy, but it is always worth the challenges it presents. Throughout the course of human history, very few democratic societies have existed and fewer have lasted. The success and longevity of America's democracy is by no means an accident or a fluke. Unique to the founding of our country was the unanimous support from citizens of every political background of the concept of E Pluribus Unum and the steadfast recognition of the vitality of pluralism in maintaining a free society. As arguably one of the most important pillars of democracy, If we once again subscribe to the idea of E Pluribus Unum, our nation has and will continue to survive trying times.